Are you relatively newer to selling? Or maybe you've been around for a while, but you would still consider yourself a sales beginner. If that's the case, that's not a bad thing. In fact, being willing and able to acknowledge that you have a lot to learn is the first step to actually starting to blow away your sales. And what's great news for you is that you can either follow one of two paths. One is you try to figure it out all on your own, and you beat your head against the wall and you keep on doing the same things over and over and over again. The other option is that you learn a selling process, is that you train yourself, you learn the absolute basics on exactly what you must do in order to be successful, and you can actually begin to outperform advanced salespeople in no time. In this video, I'm going to show you the Sales Training 101. It is what all beginners must master. Check it out. Number one, know your first 30 seconds. This is one of the most absolute fundamental and critical skills in sales. And by that I mean, what are the first 30 seconds of any selling interaction? Most salespeople never nail down their first 30 seconds. And as a result, they end up just meandering through sales conversations all the time. And they never really get into a true flow because they don't have a system. So knowing and nailing your first 30 seconds is everything. One of my sales mentors used to always say, start strong, end strong. And so what do your first 30 seconds of a sales conversation look like? Are you just going to list off all the reasons that someone should do business with your company? Or are you going to use a systematic approach that engages a prospect in a conversation? My first challenge to you is to write down that first 30 seconds of any selling interaction, whether it be your cold calls, whether it be someone that you meet at a networking event, or whether it be the first 30 seconds of a Zoom conversation on a scheduled call. Don't wing that first 30 seconds, know it cold. Number two, get them talking. Now, one of the best things that you can do early on in your selling career, and you're not going to like this, but one of the best things that you can do is actually record your conversations. And by the way, if your organization or you don't have the technology to actually record the entire call, at least just use your iPhone to just record your voice. So just do a voice recording of just your voice using your phone and just listening to what you're saying. And chances are what you will hear is that you are doing so much talking. You're just going on and on and on and on. And it is one of the most common beginner mistakes in selling. By the way, it's one of the most common mistakes in selling, period. But it's really common as a beginner because we're nervous. And the way most people respond to nerves is that they just blabber on and on. And when we're doing it, it doesn't actually sound that bad. But when we listen to it, we're suddenly like, oh man, that is a mess. So what we want to do is, of course, record our conversations and start to think about, am I actually getting the prospect doing most of the talking, or am I doing most of the talking? And start to track about how much of the percentage of the time of the conversation are you talking versus them. And what an advanced salesperson is doing is they are getting the prospect talking. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't have periods, particularly at the beginning of the conversation, where you're doing a bit more of the talking, but the only goal of that is to get the prospect to start to open up, to get them talking. And so if you're just doing all of the talking up front, you're probably in trouble. We want to engage them in a conversation by using a strong first 30 seconds to get them talking, to get them going. Number three, have your process. This is basically my life's mission, is to allow salespeople to have a sales process. And whether you use my sales process or someone else's sales process, I don't really care. But have your process. Have a systematic process that you are following on a step-by-step basis in order to close sales. If you are just winging the process and you're just kind of doing whatever comes to you, you are in trouble. You must have a sales process. This is one of the biggest distinctions between average salespeople and great salespeople. And by the way, the problem with not having a sales process now is that if you don't have a sales process at the beginning of learning to sell, then you're never going to have a process down the road. And here's a good example. Take learning a game like golf. If you've ever been to a country club and you've golfed with some friends, you probably have some friends who learned golf by taking lessons, and then years later, they've got a good swing. They're solid golfers. And then you meet those other golfers who were self-taught, and their swing is all over the place. Chances are they have a huge slice that just goes off to the right. Because they never learned how to actually golf the right way, what they did is they practiced and practiced and practiced, and they learned how to golf the wrong way. And so a lot of times you'll see very commonly golfers who will just play around a really strong slice. And all it means is that they just never learned to golf the right way. And that's very common with sales as well. You need to learn how to sell the right way now. Make a commitment to learn a process now, because you're going to be using a process. It's just a question of whether you're using a good process or a bad process. And that will ultimately determine how effective you are in sales for the rest of your selling career. Number 4, don't go for the close. Now, this is counter to what so many of us have been taught. So many of us have been taught the ABCs of selling, always be closing, or some other, macho BS approach. But the reality is that the close of a sale is the summation of everything that's gone into the conversation up until then. The close itself is not a very important moment. The close is simply just indicative of how has the conversation gone from the beginning to now. And the prospect is basically going to be deciding, do I want to do business with this person or not? If you are strong in sales, you're actually going to be focusing much more on the earlier part of your sales conversations, because that's where the prospect is ultimately deciding, do I want to do business with this person or not? If in the 59th minute of a conversation, that's where you're going for the close, and you're not closing it, it's not because your close wasn't strong. It's because what you did in the other 58 minutes leading up, that wasn't strong. So don't worry about going for the close and having some arm wrestle technique to get the person to buy from you. That's all junk. That is old school crap. What you instead want to do is make sure that you're using a process from the beginning all the way to the close that leads the prospect to a close and doesn't ultimately end up in you going back and forth and in some kind of an argument trying to get them to buy. Number 5. You are not a punching bag. So many of us, when we get into sales, we've heard ideas like the customer's always right. Always do anything you can to get them to buy. But that's a bunch of old school junk. The customer isn't always right, and the prospect is very rarely right. You don't have to do anything you can in order to close a sale. You only want to close sales with the right people. And if someone's not a fit, don't waste your time trying to close that person. You want to only be focusing on the right prospects. One of the key mindsets that you have to take away is that you are not a punching bag. If a prospect is being a jerk, they're just saying, hey, you know what? Just tell me the price. Can we just cut all this stuff and just tell me the price? You don't have to then just acquiesce and be like, oh, okay, well, it's $1,000 or whatever it is. That's weakness. You are strong. You are a strong person, and you have rights as a salesperson as well. And you are not a punching bag. You are a doctor. You are there to solve a problem. And by the way, if they're not a fit, move the hell along. That's okay. That is what a top performing salesperson thinks like. I don't care what a prospect says to me in a selling situation. If they say something that is not in alignment with where I want to go, I'm going to either bring them back on course or we're parting ways. That's it. You are not a punching bag. You have value and you are changing people's lives. And that is the mindset that you must have when you're selling. For the rest of your career, you are not a punching bag. You are someone who has value, and if you close the right sales, you are changing that person's life for the better. That must be your mindset moving forward. And by the way, if you can't get into that mindset, then move on. Don't be in sales. go into operations, do something else, because this industry is not going to be a fit for you. You must believe that you are bringing value into your prospects' lives. So there is the Sales Training 101, what all beginners must master. And if you enjoyed this video, then have an awesome free training on the data-driven approach to closing more sales in today's marketplace. Just click right here to get registered instantly. Seriously, just click right here. This is an in-depth training that will help you close more sales at higher prices, all while generating more meetings. Also, if you got some value, please like this video below on YouTube and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking my face, which should be right about here, to get access to a new video just like this one each week.